Good morning, dearest friends. Welcome. Friday, the 26th of ER, the 27th of May. We're studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Right now, we are studying Maseches Shabbos, Perek Shisha Asar. That's chapter 16, page 119b, with Hashem's help, turning today to 118b, turning hopefully to 119. Broadly speaking, our conversation started with a discussion about salvaging stuff on Shabbos from a fire, food of 3 meals, which led us to a discussion about, other types of salvaging, like a broken barrel, which led us to talking about how many meals one is mechuyev, compelled to consume on Shabbos. That would be the number of meals that one is saving from a fire. We discovered there are 2 opinions, 4 meals, 3 meals. We spoke for a while about accommodations for those that are in need. That would reflect as well the halachic obligated number of meals. We spoke about some other aspects of tzedakah-related tradition and Jewish law. And then, continuing the discussion about Shabbos, we spoke of Oneg Shabbos, how to have Oneg pleasure on Shabbos, which kinds of foods, different shitot. The bottom line is it's very much subjective, depending on both a person's means, lifestyle, and ability, lifestyle, and preference of taste. We then transition to talk about the sechar, the rewards, protections, and value of observing Shabbos correctly. We spoke more broadly about what would happen for Am Yisrael on a global scale if we would all observe Shabbos. And then we went on to talk about a series of behaviors considered so virtuous that Rabbi Yossi said, Yehi Chelki, I would love to have my portion in the world to come among those folks. Included in them, having 3 meals, the time when people would pray, Hallel every day, folks that have some suffering in this world, folks who are committed to studying the base measures, don't disturb or break things down, those who collect tzedakah and are less compelled to make the tough calls, which could be associated with some spiritual liability. We had a honorable mention of being suspected of something that they hadn't really committed. We then closed off with an interesting fact that Rabbi Yossi had 5 sons, and an interesting way that he expressed his virtue in that conversation.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Since there's a connection here with Mama Tzilin and Tzedakah, does the question arise on a fire to take out, because every shul has a Tzedakah box and money set aside? Does that have a status?
That's an interesting question. I don't believe so, but let's keep our eyes peeled. Perhaps in the coming Mishnahs, which will continue on the subject of saving from fire, maybe there will be additional data. So it's a good question. Well, actually, I take that back. We will talk about salvaging items of, we'll talk a little bit about salvaging items of high value, and I suppose maybe included in that is a pushka. Now, concern for the loss of money is probably more acute today, where our dollar bills are flammable and our checks and our documents and our stocks that may be tangible. Precious metals, although susceptible to fire, probably are easier to salvage than. But anyways, we'll talk about that down the road. So let's keep stay tuned. For now, we're going to resume a series of what we call this self-biographical thoughts, perspectives, experiences, and virtues portrayed and conveyed to us by Rabbi Yossi. So I'm going to share the screen, and we will start continuing our journey through the Talmud. This as well will certainly challenge our creativity and our present concept of, you'll see. But I think, let's take a look. Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi further said, Miyamai loy karisi li ishti ishti. I never referred to my wife as my wife. Hold on, no questions till we read to the end and we read Rashi, and then we'll welcome all the questions. Ulishoiri shoiri, nor did I ever call my ox my ox. Elo ishti beisi. I would refer to my wife as my household or my home. Ulishoiri, and to my ox, sadi, my field. Actually, I'm not gonna look at Rashi. I first want to have your take. What do you think Rabbi Yossi is saying? And please note, Rabbi Yossi is saying this in a either congratulatory or at the very least, he doesn't think there's anything wrong with this. But would you please, anyone like to explain what he might be trying to convey?
I think, as far as his wife, first of all, it's a good
Don't
thing
say
he called-
misogyny.
What?
I said, don't say misogyny.
No,
No, I'm kidding.
no. I said, well, first of all, it's a good thing he didn't call his wife his ox, and
Is what his
Well,
boss?
no, his ox.
Oh, yes.
It's a good thing.
We'll
he
probably
didn't
have
do
to
that.
find another
But
wife.
I think he gives both his wife credit for establishing his home and taking care of the of the home and the family. And without the ox, the field would be useless if it didn't have the ox to plow it.
So-
So
His choice of words leaves something to be desired.
Hold on. I want to hear what Doctor says, and then Rebbe, I want to hear what you have to say.
So I just think it's sort of complementary to both the ox and the wife.
So I could see this in two ways. Either he's viewing everything in a very utilitarian way. What is the bottom line? What is my wife good for or worth? I'm not saying that's pshat. I'm playing devil's advocate, or I'm trying to consider the different. Either he is just being entirely practical. What is this worth for me? What is the bottom line? Which obviously does not jive at all with our contemporary sensibilities. But I think he may, in an interesting and not so poetic way, intend to be complimentary. He's saying you're more than just my wife. You're everything. You're the whole household. And the ox as well. An ox is an ox, but what is it really? It's the totality of his business side. So maybe his wife is his family life. His ox is his business life. And in both areas, he's trying to see the full picture.
I think that
Professor?
we are trying to make more from this text that it says that he is not talking practically, he's talking metaphorically, and he calls my wife my home. Of course, it's complimentary, but in the same way, he could have said, instead of my wife, my life, or my fate, or whatever.
My love?
No, my love is somewhat different. I'm talking about the extension of the one concept through another concept. So it's a regular pattern of metaphorical speech. And the same is with the ox. He calls it metaphorically my field. He might also call him my sustenance, or something like that. I don't think it would input more in that than the simple metaphorical speech.
Right.
By being an agricultural type of society gives you the importance of what he's saying.
Red Barrel?
I think our problem is that we're saying this in one sentence. If the same thing would say when he speaks about his wife, wherever that may be, he refers to her like that. And when he's speaking with the other farmers or whatever, he speaks about his ox. I think we're just struck by the fact that it's in the same sentence. Otherwise, there's no feeling of disrespect if you take it separately. If I would say, without my car, I'm useless, and then somewhere else say, without my wife, I'm useless, doesn't mean I'm saying the same thing at the same time.
I hear you. You're saying in one sentence to equate his wife to his ox makes us feel
I think that's what's bothering us.
right.
I think. if
Well,
you
maybe he
would've-
didn't have his life was fairly simple. He had his home, he had his wife, he had his ox, he had his field. Okay, anyways, I'm not here to defend. I'm just
I think if it was not complimentary, there would be another line in the Gemara telling about how he died within 2 weeks.
And not from intestinal stuff while doing a mitzvah.
he was never seen since. All right, but now I want to show you Rashi. Like Harisi li ishti. What's going on over here? Sha'af sichas chulin sheli yesh lilmoid heimena chachma. Even in my conversational language, there's always multiple tiers of depth. So I think what Rashi is saying, take it or leave it, is that just like the Torah always speaks shorthand, and there's deep code and more meaning between the lines, perhaps he is strategically or intentionally saying even simple things in a code of sorts to allow deeper meaning. So he's not just talking about what's going on with his wife, but he also is giving a compliment, which would otherwise be a whole sentence. He could say, the other day I was talking to my wife, who is my everything, blah, blah, blah. So here he found a way to convey that without having to say more than one word, which seems consistent with this value of shorthand, but conveying deep meaning. This is what Rashi is saying. I'm not telling you that everybody accepts Rashi's interpretation, but that's what I believe Rashi is saying over here. He was not trying to be offensive. He just spoke in a code, short words that contained a lot of depth. What does it mean? Ishti Beisi. Shehi Ikar Shal Bayis. She is everything about his home. She is what makes the household tick. A field is useless without the ox. The Marsha, for whatever reason, isn't being. I don't know why the Marsha hasn't been tagged. Talk to. I'll have to ask Dr. Hammer to talk to the executives at Sefaria. The Marsha says something that Rebero you're not going to like. Hang on. Just need to find the right text. The Marsha doesn't like this. He says, what's going on? What's the big chach? Why is he bragging that there's chachma in his regular conversational language? He says that this was a compliment that was meant to empower and motivate. He wants to motivate and compliment his wife. Or alternatively, you could read this a little differently. You could say that he was trying to urge her to be on top of the game by complimenting her. So there's two different ways you could read this text, which obviously have very, very divergent meanings. But anyway, so either he was just talking about how he always speaks in code and riddle or shorthand with great depth, or he was being complimentary, or he is trying to be motivational. And the truth of the matter is, we do know, although I'm not sure if this is a good idea in a family, in a relationship, but we do know that compliments many times is an effective part of motivating folks to be more effective and more impactful and more engaged in whatever they're meant to be doing. And so we might call this positive reinforcement. Again, I don't think we were comfortable with that take, but that is certainly a possibility. Reb Beryl?
I think that what we say every Friday night about our wife is just an expanded statement that Rabbi Yossi made so succinctly.
So you're saying Eishes Chayil is a way
Right.
to really poetically elaborate?
Yeah, the same thing.
Oh, there is one more point I should say, which is probably also, at least at certain ages in Jewish history, this is probably the understanding that there are times where, and I'm not sure this is a good thing, I'm just being candid. There are certain societies that out of the virtue of tznius, modesty, seem to overly remove women from visible society. Again, this is not an endorsement of such. And so perhaps here, not even using the word my wife, but using a very neutral term as my house, that could be perceived as an act of erasure.
Yeah, but why say about Shori Sadi?
Right. Okay.
That's the intent.
That's why it's probably not pshat. But I'm trying to give you the full picture and the full spectrum of how folks may interpret this segment.
Rabbi,
yes.
I think if we look at the Hebrew, the wife is not within earshot. It doesn't say, I said to my wife, you are. This is said maybe in the base medrash.
No, on the contrary. Well, actually, no, you're right. I don't know. My instinctive reading would have been that he was calling his wife Basi, which is why I'm inclined to see it as a compliment as opposed to an insult. If you talk about someone not to their face, maybe it's, but now here we have quoted, and this is obvious in the Torah. It says that the high priest atones for himself and his household. And over there in the Gemara in the Mishnah, we say Beisoy zu ishti. So this is a general idea in Judaism that the wife is referred to as the person's entire household. And so so we see that it's not an isolated event. Anyways, all right, let's continue. It's about to get a whole lot more interesting. So hold on tight. Rabbi Yossi said, Miyamai, all my life, I never looked at the place of the circumcision. Rashi miroiv tznius, out of an abundance of modesty. The Gemara asks, is that really so? Is it true? Does this sound like an accurate assertion? The Amrulay Rabbi, my time of Karli Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Don't we know that this is a teaching that was exclusively about Rabbeinu HaKadosh? And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said the reason why they called him HaKadosh had to do with the fact that he never looked at his Mila, but Rabbi Milsa Achrita have a beish. So the Gemara answers no. Rabbi had an additional factor which made him a contender for this great compliment called HaKadosh, which is rarely exercised, and that's because he never put his hand under his belt. Please don't ask me any technical questions about this. We'll take it as it comes. But this was considered virtuous in the eyes.
I personally have a problem with it because the bris is actually the covenant. It has kedusha, in my opinion, because
the bris certainly has kedusha
between us and Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Of course.
And in the old days, when you made a shvua, actually,
right. Yeah,
So,
in the pre-Matan Torah era, the holiest item that they could hold on to, if you will, was the bris. And yet it appears that in the temple era, it was considered virtuous, notwithstanding the kedusha of the bris, but it was considered an act of great piety to not look there, not to touch it anyway. And there are halachic suggestions or dictates which is not beyond the scope of this moment about but anyways, that is the Gemara and that is the assertion here. So basically in the Second Temple era, we could see that they probably did not make a shavua while holding on to the bris, or at the very least that was not the practice being referenced over here. The Rabbi Yossi further said, the walls of my house never saw the inside of my garments, which is an indication, Rashi says, when he would disrobe, he would first cover himself or go to a modest place. Not modest, I'm saying he would cover himself, mishum tznius, which was an act of extreme modesty. B'sadina mitachas, b'yoshe b'mitasai. He would cover himself in the bed and then change his clothing, an act of great kiddusha. Oh, hold on. You're muted.
What's the hi?
Shalom Aleichem. It's good to see you back on the other side of the screen.
Yes, it's good. And have a wonderful Shabbos. I still have the taste of last Shabbos.
Oh, Shkoyach, it was good to have you. I hope you'll come visit again.
Yes. Okay. Have a happy Git Yom Tov.
Reb Sender was with us on Shol Shabbos, and now he's back in New York, but joining us with Reb Eli for Zoom for the Gemara. So, anyways, okay. Rav Yossi, yeah. So Rav Yossi further complimented himself in acts of great piety, modesty, and avoiding and covering himself when he was changing, and so forth.
Isn't it?
Hold on. The Ben Yehuda has a very interesting question. Rabbeinu HaKadosh was the name for Rebbe, holy. The Gemara asks, why was he called Rabbeinu HaKadosh? And the Gemara answers that he said that it had to do with how he handled the Milah. Who called Rabbeinu HaKadosh Rabbeinu HaKadosh? Did he call himself that? Or did other people call him that? And so the Ben Yehuda asks, why are you asking Rebbe why people call him names? You should ask the people that call him that. Hashoya lo mashal Rebbe. Why is he asking Rebbe? Yishal chachamim asher korim oisekach. They should ask the people that call him. Furthermore, Rabbeinu HaKadosh was an anav. Why is he bragging? That doesn't seem consistent with his personality. Particularly, this is a matter that no one knew about. No one knows about, ostensibly, people don't know what happens. He goes to the restroom or other times that he would otherwise, So what's going on? So here, this is a very interesting assertion. I'm not sure about the historicity of it, but take a look here. Venerally, ki hashoyel hoya Antigonus hamelech. I don't know if that's a misprinting of Antoninus. As we know, there are a variety of traditions based on the Gemara that Rebbe had a very close relationship with high-ranking Roman officials, possibly, and again, the contemporary scholars try to figure out who he knew. But the bottom line is here, there's a tradition that there was somebody high up in the Roman hierarchy, maybe even an emperor or a Caesar or whatever you want to call it, who converted. He studied Torah with Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Amar b'Gemara, the Achar Shnimal, Amar Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Sheyira Samila Shalai Im Nimal Kiroi. And he asked him if he would please inspect his milah to make sure that the circumcision was halachically appropriate. V'heishivli, and then, and only as a result of this conversation, Rabbeinu HaKadosh responded, B'didila yistaklis miyamai. I've never looked at my bris. You want me to check out yours? Ukinizkar, the Gemara lefize, davar shaloi, davar zeh shalistaka b'milah shaloi, huchrach legalis l'melech, mipnei shalachatz oisei shira shaloi. And so he puts together two stories and says this is the most probable and reasonable circumstance that he might have actually revealed what would have otherwise been a very private and not public thing. And when it comes to the king, there you have to be you have less latitude to not answer. So the Ben Yehuda says an interesting thing. He combines a few different stories about Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He has a very interesting theory of how he ever would have discovered this act of great piety and modesty on Rabbeinu HaKadosh's behalf. And as a result of the story, he probably started being called Rabbeinu HaKadosh after they found out about that. And they also were aware of other acts of great piety. Maybe the king asked him why they call you Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And so therefore he only responded to one matter because the king already knew about it. So anyways, a very interesting. I just want to throw in one thing over here. It's a shame Dr. Hammer is not here because I know in his professional world, this is something that's important to have a balance. But it says that he never put his hand under his belt. So the Rabbi Yehuda asks, what's so special about this? So he explains with Kabbalistic terminology that the body is created in the form of what's known as the partsuf, the sefirot, the 10 sefirot. So how do the sefirot, according to, we say in Pasach Eliyahu, Chesed the roya yamina, kindness, Chesed is the right hand, Gevura is the left hand, Tiferes is the body, or what I think we call today the core. Netzach and Hoid are the legs, the thighs. The Yisoid Oisbris Kodesh, and the Sphira of Yisoid correlates to the male organ that has in it the holy bris, the circumcision. Nimsa Yadav Shaladam Him Keneged Chesed and Gvura Shem Emtsoyis. Chesed and Gvura are the two polar extremes. And so mystically, to lower the hands, which represent Chesed and Gvura, and to place them into the zone of Netzach Ed Hoid, it would mystically cause a scrambling of the radio waves and the kedusha. Being that Rabbeinu HaKadosh was constantly attuned to the mystical part of existence, therefore he was always careful, or he was particularly conscious of this structure. Dr. Stamler, if you'll go into a Beis Medrash somewhere in, I doubt they'll accept this as but this is a mystical oriented take over here.
It actually means I can't put my hands in my pockets.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question. And what about putting on socks? So I'm not here to give you all the answers. I'm just here to give you a little flavor of the different takes on this Gemara. The reason why I wasn't inclined to share this teaching, because it's a little Kabbalistic, but I'll tell you why I'm sharing it, because today, every day of the Omer, there's another Sphira. So you have Chesed, Shabbat Chesed. So you know what today is? Today is Yisod, Shabbat Yisod. So today is the Sphira that's all about Yisod. So I thought it would be interesting to see a mystical take which references the alignment of the body reflective of the Sphirot, and with more emphasis than you'll hear usually in a Chabad conversation about Yisod. Let's see if there's anything else here.
Are you aware of it really has nothing to do with the Gemara specifically, but as far as the Sfirot are concerned and Yesod, since there's a male and a female component, do they also have any Sphira if Yesod is correlated to the male organ? Do they have any Sphira that's correlated to the
female organ?
Female, besides Shechina is, I think, considered the female entity.
So while avoiding too much, being too graphic, generally speaking, the mystical take on the world describes that there is a balance of the masculine and the feminine, and usually 6 sfirot. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod are considered the masculine. Malchus, which is like reality in the world, is usually, or the conveyance Shefa to the world, that's usually portrayed as the feminine. And again, there are Kabbalistic schools of thought that have a more sexual, if I could use that word, more of a correlation to that. So usually Yesod being the male reproductive organ, if you want to get graphic, or if you want to see the mystical correlation, so then Malchus would be the recipient in that sense. Now, the reason why I think the Kabbalists are comfortable speaking this way is because the Kabbalists, people are critical of the Kabbalists to say, oh, they're just obsessed with the matters of, that are sexual in nature. But the Kabbalists, on the contrary, they're saying God created humanity reflective of a spiritual dynamic. And so just as there is Shefa that comes Malamayla and it's conveyed into the universe, and so Hashem creates humanity in the image of God, and imbues in humans, unlike any other spiritual creatures, with the capacity of reproduction. And so that's how Judaism perceives reproduction, as a supremely holy act, because essentially we're mirroring the dynamic of Kedusha coming to the world, the Shechina conveying Kedusha into the universe and the like. And even more so, Malchus, which we're saying is the feminine, actually has within it all of the other Sefirot. So really, in a certain sense, you have Malchut, which is a mirror image, or receiving and reproducing a copy of the Sefirot that are being conveyed from above. I hope that wasn't too confusing nor too off topic, but that's, I believe, the answer, Doctor, to your question. You accept that? Doctor, I need a thumbs up or something.
Yes.
I need you.
Yes.
All right. The Gemara continues. Rabbi Yossi continues. You heard the whole. Okay. No, you missed the good one. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi further taught. I never violated the words of my colleagues. Yodeani ba'atzmi. Wait. Hold on. That's an interesting. All right, let's see. Miyamai, I never didn't agree with my friends. I know I'm not a kohen, but if my fellow sages tell me, go up and do birchas kohanim, ani oila. Whoa, what does that mean?
He's not a Kohen. He's not a Kohen.
Let's see Tosfos here. Hold on. Lo yada Rabbi Yossi ma'isur yesh bazar ha'oila l'duchen. I'm sorry. Lo yada ri ma'isur yesh bazar ha'oila l'duchen l'shum bracha l'vatal shekanim amatar l'varchas Yisrael. What's wrong?
Maybe he goes up to the platform, but he doesn't duchen.
Right. On the contrary, Tosfos here is saying, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with going up. So what exactly is the chiddush? What's the isur?
Tosfos said bracha levatala.
It's a bracha levatala, but if he doesn't make a bracha, there's no problem.
So there's maris. They always have a maris involved.
But there's a marsha, which again, for some reason, they stopped linking. I don't know what happened. We used to get the marsha here. The marsha says, or based on the marsha, that in Gemara Ksubis, you're not allowed to go up to duchen. So the marsha says maybe he wasn't going to duchen, just climbing up on the platform. And Tosfos is asking, what's wrong with going up to the platform if you're not going to duchen? I mean, here's what I would say. If you would ask me how I understand this as follows. On the contrary, it's kind of embarrassing. If you know you're not a kohen, like what do you, and everyone knows you're not a kohen, then what are you doing going up? And so to me, it's in a sense, he's taking on a degree of shame. People think, oh, this guy's going Meshoga. He thinks now he's going to become a kohen.
It's worse than that. If he can go up, why can't I go up?
So, but let's take a look inside. Actually, here we have the Darkei Moshe. This is the Ramah's work on the Torah, I believe. Kosva Tosfos. Periko Kisvei Lo Yadati Ma'isur Yesh Bazar L'Luduchem Lo Mishum Bracha V'Atal Shlakainu Eretz Torah L'Varach. Tosfos says, what's wrong with going? Matzasi Kosva Zeh Ulefiza Yochel HaYisrael La'aloisim HaKoinim V'Hem Yivarchu L'Roiv Am Hadras Melech Matoiv. Hypothetically, an Israelite can go up on the bima with the kohanim to keep them company. So he quotes.
Well, actually, if an Israel goes up with the kohanim, then he's not in a position, and he does make the law, he's not in a position to be blessed by the Kohanim because
True.
he's on the other side.
True. So I think he's quoting the Maharsha here. That basically this hypothetically, you could have a scenario where Israelites go. But the problem is, Tosfos elsewhere, I'm sorry, there's a problem with Tosfos because the Gemara in Ksuvah says, the Zarnois is cap of everybody say. Well, maybe the prohibition is only when you go up by yourself, not when you're in a combination. So anyways, an interesting discussion. Actually, let me do one more thing here.
I have a different question.
Okay.
Rabbi Yossi, what was the position of Rabbi Yossi? Who was Rabbi Yossi that it's so important to let us know so many things that he said?
He was a great tzaddik.
There were a lot of great tzaddikim.
Okay, and in the course of the study of Talmud, we will meet many, but Rabbi Yossi was apparently big time enough. See, the fact that he said these things about himself is not what's impressive. That's not interesting. What's interesting is that his words were important enough to be recorded.
Right.
Somehow, Rabbi, it doesn't jive with modesty. Where's bittul? I mean, there's all kinds of things I have difficulty with. Maybe he was a Levi.
Well, actually, no. Rabbi Yossi was a teacher. Modesty and humility doesn't mean to deny one's true strengths and qualities. So at the time where Rabbi Yossi was already a major senior leader of Klal Yisrael, right here, Rabbi Yossi B'Chalafta is probably who we're talking about. So you were talking about a very great person at the zenith of his career, and he is teaching the people of his time things that they didn't appreciate to be virtuous. So all the things that he's saying, Yehi Chelki, they're things that maybe people didn't realize are that important, or maybe they were obvious. And he is saying, you know what? You think these items are obvious? Well, I want to tell you, these are very important. I would be thrilled to be associated with these wonderful people.
I can only tell you that my own experience with Rabbi Hirschfrun, Tzaddik Livrocha, was the opposite. Never would speak about himself. Never.
All right. Well, Rabbi Yossi felt that it was important to convey these things, and he did. And I'm not so perturbed by it, to be honest. If they wouldn't have been important, or if they wouldn't have been interesting academically or halachically or hashkafically, the Talmud wouldn't include it. But obviously, these are considered items of grave importance, significance. And so the Gemara does choose to share them. And we're almost at the end of Rabbi Yossi's, and as an aside, we know a lot about Rabbi Yossi biographically as a result.
He was born in Tzipori.
Right, he was towards the end of the Talmud project.
He's the fifth most quoted Rav in the Talmud. I just read it.
So Tzipori had a long Shabbos.
No, Tzipori just had a late Shabbos.
I think that what we are dealing here is a collection of transcripts of the discussions where the rabbis were sharing their experiences. This is not the only place in the Talmud. Like, for example, there is a similar discussions why the rabbis say why they lived long lives. Like, for example, they never used a synagogue as a shortcut and other things that
we encounter that, right?
Sequential, yeah. So it's quite typical for the Talmud to give us collections of ideas for our everyday life. And basically, who says that exactly is not that important as what they say. Right.
And the other thing, Professor, which you bring up, and I know it wasn't your primary point, but it's very interesting, is that I realized this was all introduced parenthetically, because he had one comment that was about Shabbos. But it seems like the way the traditions were recorded, this was a known text, manuscript, or even oral tradition of a whole bunch of items of virtue that Rabbi Yossi shared, and they were interesting enough and significant enough to be recorded.
Maybe also this is setting the ideal for students. You think you're so great doing whatever you're doing. Here's somebody in his whole life didn't do this, didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I see it almost I think a lot of these items were probably considered elementary or not that exciting. And I think what's happening here is Rabbi Yossi is reminding people that sometimes, I mean, some of the things are a big deal, but some of them are very simple. If we scroll back up, 3 meals on Shabbos or davening or, observing Shabbos according to the halachic parameters, those are basic things. And so some of the ideas are really far out and no one does them. Some of them are kind of quirks, if you will. And then some of them are very fundamental ideas. And here Rabbi Yossi is.
Actually, it bothered me when not the fact that they said 3 meals, but the fact that they say 3 meals and each meal should have at least 2 good dishes, and the dishes should be made out of shumim and
No, but that wasn't Rabbi Yossi. That was
no, I know, but in general, it bothered me in general how controlling and how demagogically everything is. I mean, you got to do it this way, and it's an opinion of one person, and everybody hangs their hats on these statements and say that's the way we have to do it. And then you have over here with Rabbi Yossi saying, I never said something that I took back, which means he never acknowledges a mistake in his life. To me, that's not exactly.
No. I think you're misinterpreting. Let's look at Rashi and then let's review it and then we'll discuss. I never denied something that I said, even if it was proven to be wrong. I think that's what it's saying. If I said something and I ended up being kind of awkward, I never denied saying it just because it would have been convenient.
But then it says because I always said the truth to begin with, meaning I've always said the truth. That's why I
don't think that's what Rashi is saying. He's saying I didn't take back my words, even if it would have been convenient. If I said something and I hold by it, even if it's socially awkward, I'll bear the social cost. I'll bear the price of being honest or. Because basically, if he said something about someone that was not flattering, but it wasn't, and Rashi points out, wasn't considered lashon hara for whatever reason. Even though the guy's going to come and beat me up, I'm not going to deny what I said. So that's what Rashi says. What's here? Rabbi Yossi never said something positive or negative about a specific person, then denied it. So this is not him being stubborn and not willing to see another perspective. This is him taking ownership of the things he said, even if there is a consequence associated. You don't have to like it, but that's what he's saying. And he considered that virtuous.
Rabbi.
Yes.
I see another very important lesson here, that he speaks about things that are social, that he didn't violate words, etc., as well as things that are halachic. So he's very careful in everyday things as well as whether going up to the platform. If you look just above as friends or whatever what the wording is, it's the ben odom lechaveroi as well.
Right. Yeah, but the commentaries actually infer from here that he had a fairly flexible perspective on lashon hara, and so all the commentators are trying to say, but the bottom line is he's talking about taking ownership of the things he said, notwithstanding.
No, I'm talking about the line just above where you're open there about how he dealt with his friends. Just go.
Yeah.
One line.
Right. So and that what?
The page that you have. Just go back.
Yeah.
1 or 2 lines above it. I can't scroll.
Oh, you want me to go higher up?
Yeah. Here we go. Just a second. I never violated the words of my friends. That's social behavior.
But again, we're not talking. He doesn't mean that any time a friend told him something, he did it. I think what he means here is that the chachamim, who have authority, even though he also is an independent authority, he always followed the psak of his fellow chachamim. I believe that's what we're saying over here. So again, it's not that he is swayed by social pressure. He's saying that even if I didn't agree halachically, I deferred to the plurality of my friends. I believe that's what we're saying here. We can.
I thought that he's talking about behaving properly in addition to halachic things.
But you know what? I may be wrong. I may be wrong. Let me see if anybody weighs in.
It's nice to think that he would be careful about those things as well.
What do you mean?
That he wouldn't violate the words of a friend. That has nothing to do with halacha.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk about friends as friends, not other rabbonim.
By the way, some say this is a metaphor. If his friends told him to take on a big initiative, which he really wasn't keen on doing, if the Chachamim said he'd do it, he would do it. That's how some take. This is Tosfos HaRosh says. The Tosfos, our Tosfos clearly believes that he's saying about going up to do duchening. And actually, I think I could find the support to my interpretation that going up might have been an act of shame, and he was willing to take the shame in order to honor his friends. So that would be consistent with him saying that he never retracted his word, even if there's social consequences. What he's saying is even though he's a very great person, worthy of being highlighted in such a manner, that doesn't mean he would cover up, retract, or do something just because of his own kavod. He was deferential to his friends, something to that effect.
So, Rabbi, to go to Kohanim, where you're the expert, what happens today for a handicapped Kohen? Should he go up there with help to duchen, or should he
Beyond
not?
Beyond the scope of this conversation, but it's a good question.
No, because somebody would be going to the platform to help. That's where I'm coming from.
I hear you. So you have to look in the Shulchan Aruch and see. I'm not certain they would go up. But I would rather show that to you inside when we get to that discussion.
We have time to duchen until Shavuos.
You want to hear an interesting alumniship take on this? The Ksav Sofer, who's the son of the Chassam Sofer. So he writes that Rabbi Yossi had a unique viewpoint. He says, mitzvahs tzrichos kavana. In order to fulfill a mitzvah obligation, you have to have kavana. You see, I feel bad that Dr. Hammer is not here. This is one of his big sugyas. So, although a non-kohen is not allowed to duchen, according to Rabbi Yossi, who says it's all about the kavana, if he gets up, he could even say the words Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. But because his kavana is not to do duchening, because he knows he's not a kohen, well, then he has not actually, according to Rabbi Yossi, he has not transgressed prohibition. So Rabbi Yossi is saying is, if my friends tell me to go up, I can go up because of my viewpoint of brachas tzrichas kavana. All right, a little lumdus. Take it if you like it. What does it mean that he never retracted? So Rashi, we explained, he never hid from the consequences of his words. The Meiri says he upheld any commitments. If he made a commitment, he never drayed out of it. He didn't try to deny it or change the terms.
Rabbi.
The Maharal, hold on one more second. The Maharal says, sometimes you speak about your friend, something you really shouldn't be, and you're afraid that you'll be overheard. So you turn around to check, is anyone looking? So the Maharal says, he never said something offensive about his friend that he had to turn around and peek. Give me. Sorry. Arranging, we're getting a set of art scroll for the shul, a full set of the art scroll shots.
I have a different question.
Go ahead.
Going back to the handicapped Cohen, is there Does he have to go up to the duchen?
I don't want to talk about it without exploring the primary sources. That's why I would differ, because I don't want to say something on such a sensitive topic and that without being absolutely certain. So if we come to the Gemara that talks about it, we'll look in the Shulchan Aruch. So again, I like the Maharal's pshat the best. He never said something that he had to be afraid would be overheard. He never said something nasty about a person that warranted being afraid. So if you're going to ask me to vote which pshat I personally like, I think the Maharal gives a good pshat. I hope that's an acceptable thing to say. Actually, now I realize. Well, anyways, we can continue. For some reason here he doesn't link the Maharal, but that's a good Maharal. Now we're going to transition. So Adkan, we are done with Rabbi Yossi for now. Everything there's to know about Rabbi Yossi on this subject, we've already concluded. We know about Rabbi Yossi's declarations of Yehei Chelki, the things that he considered very virtuous, even though maybe they weren't popular. From there, we transition to talk about different things that Rabbi Yossi said that he did, which are considered very virtuous and I guess something either to emulate or at least to celebrate. Now we're going to see a few other sages who shared specific items that they said were worthy of schar. Were the sages bragging here? Or were they trying to share with us virtuous behavior? Or were they each on different occasions queried about things that they maybe deserve schar, and they shared it, and then the Chazal collected them and presented it in this format? Probably that's the most likely way this Gemara was formed. We'll take a look at some of the commentaries as the Gemara unfolds. Rabbi Nachman said, Rabbi Nachman, Teisali, give me my reward. I deserving of reward. The kaimis sholesh suudas b'Shabbos, because I had 3 meals on Shabbos. This is Rabbi Nachman's saying. Again, to clarify this, Rabbi Nachman is Rabbi Nachman of the Gemara, not Rabbi Nachman Me'uman, who came 1,300 years after the Gemara was finished. That was one of the big things that he said he is worthy of sechar. What's the big celebration? Just that he kept 3 meals. So the Tosfos and the Chayre says that maybe in his day, people were not makpid to have 3 meals. And therefore he was saying that he, unlike society, was very meticulous. He is worthy of schar. And he was also hoping to repopularize this hanhaga, to repopularize this behavior, to encourage, again, observing 3 meals.
Hi. Are we not supposed to think of the reward when we do a mitzvah?
We are not supposed to think about the reward of doing the mitzvah. These are rabbis who are portraying and sharing with people how important these things were, and so they used that language. That's my take, anyways. Hold on. Yeah, it seems like many people were not keeping properly these meals, and therefore they spoke out and said, this is something very special. Another explanation. I don't know. All right, we'll have to get back to that. But anyways, that's what he saw. What does this word teisili mean? So he said it means that I get sechar. The Maharsha says, were they really so obsessed with reward? As Rebel, you asked this. The Gemara, actually the Mishnah says, we should not be serving Hashem all around reward. The answer that the Maharsha gives is, he was asking for divine reward. What was the reward that he should be able to continue to observe this mitzvah? Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, Teisili, I am worthy of reward, and you should emulate me and also be worthy of reward. The kaimis iyun tefillah, because I do iyun tefillah. I have kavana, concentration during davening. Taisa says Pirish bekavanas halev. So we'll take that shot. He davens with kavana. You'll ask the same question. Davening with kavana, isn't that elementary? Isn't that something that everyone should do? Why are we celebrating Iyun Tefillah, having kavana? Maybe what's unique about Rav Yehuda is he was somebody who was extremely consumed with Torah study. And he had a very, very rigorous, meticulous, monthly schedule of study. And there were certain sages at that time who, if Torah was entirely consumed, then they would daven with either less kavana or maybe even not daven at all, based on the convention of that time. And yet, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, notwithstanding my great devotion to Torah study, I also daven in the ideal fashion. Let's finish this paragraph. Rabbi Yehuda, taste the Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua, tastely. He says, you know what? I deserve a reward. I never walked 4 amas with my head uncovered. He always wore a yarmulke. I don't know if they called it yarmulke in Bavel in the time of the Gemara, but he wore a yarmulke.
At what point do you know? At what point in our history did they start wearing yarmulkes?
Well, in the time of the Gemara, there was an ideal to have a head covering. I was more joking about the term yarmulke.
No, I understand. I just wanted to know. I
don't know if they had kippot, but they had head coverings. It probably looked more like something that our cousins wear today. But anyways, Amar Rav Sheshes, Taseli, the Kaimis Mrs. Tefillin, I deserve a reward because I put on tefillin. Amar Rav Nachman, Taseli, the Kaimis Mrs. Tzitzis. Nachman says, I am worthy of sechar because I wear tzitzis. Rashi asked the question that I asked with my tone. Does a person deserve tefillin? I'm sorry. Is a person get a parade to celebrate them because they put on tefillin? Many Jews do their best to put on tefillin every day. Many Jews are growing in the Yiddishkeit and don't put on tefillin every day, but they put on tefillin whenever they can. So what's the big celebration? So Rashi says, Shalahiyolach arba amos. We're not talking about that they just wore tefillin. They literally never took off the tefillin. They were constantly wearing tefillin, and to wear tefillin, you need to be in a special state of concentration and purity. And so that might be the schar. Others say that today it's easy to get a pair of tefillin. All you need is $1,000 or $500, and you can get a beautiful mehudar pair of tefillin with beautiful parshios and a beautiful fresh. But in those days, manufacturing was a lot more costly, complex. It was harder to source the material, and so maybe people, even if they did tefillin, maybe they weren't able to do it in its ideal form. And so maybe the schar here, maybe the celebration here is that they did it more properly. Bli neder, because we're already 11 o'clock.
Rabbi,
hold on. Bli neder.
Okay.
Next time we meet, and you'll share your thoughts and your comment in a moment. We'll pick up analyzing this paragraph over here because there's a lot of interesting, in-depth analysis and detective work that we still need to explore to figure out what these ideas mean. We'll take a look at Tosfos. We'll take a look at some of the other commentaries to understand what exactly was being described here. Doctor?
I recently read in an article, I was surprised to read it in a Haredi publication. It was within an article that there was a period, and it didn't state when, where, in our history, where tefillin was not worn. Are you aware of anything like that?
There were periods of time where there was a proliferation of non-tefillin wearing, and I forget which of the famous Rishonim had a renewed call to the folks of his era to wear tefillin. And I'll explain to you, I'll try to do some more research because I know the article that it's referenced, but the bottom line is that it was hard to manufacture tefillin. And so it's possible that if you lived in a region where you had to import, let's say you lived in Germany and you had to import your tefillin from Bavel or from Israel, only the very wealthy people would have a tefillin, or those that inherited. And we have descriptions even in the Gemara of people who they inherited their tefillin from their ancestors. And so, yeah, it's possible that it's not possible, it's certain that there were times and places where not everyone was as meticulous with wearing tefillin. And in a sense, today, notwithstanding all the problems with 2020, with Judaism in 2022, there are many elements of both Torah mitzvah observance and Torah study that sees us more advanced than other times and places. So yeah. Doctor, if you can find that article, I'd love to see it. And we could add it.
That was not the topic of the article. It was within a discussion of a different topic, but it was brought in as an example.
Do you recall what if you find it, please share it. I'd love to see it.
Rabbi, one small thing.
Yes.
This discussion in the Yerushalmi is the same or different?
You know what? I don't know the Yerushalmi.
Okay, maybe we should have a look. I'm just curious.
What do you want to hear? Which aspect of the discussion?
If it's different and if they recall all these things.
No, the Yerushalmi is entirely a different work. It's not like you'll find these ideas reflected in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is a work that in a way is similar to our Talmud, and it's based around the Mishnah, and its objective is to uncover the halachic practice, and it introduces other parenthetical conversations, but this conversation may appear in the Yerushalmi, but it would be in a different mesechta, in a different context. So it's not like it's not like the two works are mostly similar. They're mostly different. The bottom line many times is the same, but it was two different processes. So
I'll tell you something else within, I don't know if we have the time or you have the time. Within the same article, another topic came up that was new to me that I confirmed since, that it was talking about the Zohar and the fact that Rabbi Moshe de Leon, both his wife and his daughter testified after his death that he did not copy it. There was not text. He never had the Zohar. That he made it all up by himself.
yeah,
I saw it in the actual writing. It wasn't just something that was talked about, but so that was completely something strange to me. Which
there's discussion. There is a discussion about exactly the provenance of what he found, where he found, what he may have introduced into the text. But again, not beyond the scope of this moment. But let Hashem himself will revisit. Yashikach, gentlemen, want to wish everyone a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Dr. Pasternak Refuah Shalema. We're hopeful that on Monday we'll get to see you with the beautiful backdrop of the Lamer, and wishing everyone good health and good spirits and a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
And again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for making sure that this is the most interesting, fascinating, and broad discussion.
Shabbos Mevorchim, right?
Yes, Shabbos Mevorchim.
Okay.
The Sivan, which means Shavuos is just a little bit away. All right, thank you all. Take care.
Shakara, thank you.